without humanity, are we as people truly monsters, or are we nothing? Humanity means so many different things to so many different people, but without our humanity, what will we be? What do we become? What do we make of ourselves? I don't know. And I think I'm someone who would never lose his humanity. Hopefully. But in Brandon Cronenberg's Infinity Pool, we as viewers have no choice but to witness this. Or not. I think I saw a few people walk out of the theater, but is it for the reasons you may think? So, well, with that wonderful intro out of the way, what is this movie about? Written and directed by Brandon Cronenberg, who previously made Possessor Uncut, which I didn't see, but I saw on some people's Best of 2021 list. Specifically Possessor Uncut, not just Possessor. Because, I'm sure that film probably went over the same audience as this movie and no one else. Infinity Pool follows James Foster, played by Alexander Skarsgard, who is on vacation with his wife M, played by Cleopatra Coleman, as he hopes to be inspired to write again, as he wrote his first book years ago and hasn't done much since. But at this retreat, he meets a fan of his book named Gabi, played by Mia Goth, who he and M join her and her husband to spend time together outside the resort. But on their way back, James makes one grave mistake. In this third world country, practically all crime committed is faced with execution, but James is given the option to avoid it. Or, well, not exactly. You see, since he is rich, he's able to afford being cloned, as he'll be forced to watch an exact duplicate of himself face death, while he'll keep on living, but he'll never be the same after this. That's all I want to say without spoiling the story, because while I may have problems with it, this is a great, interesting, original horror story. Well, here's a question that will never go old. Where do I start? Or more specifically, without getting into spoilers, well, since this movie revolves around our lead James, let's talk about him. James is someone who's nice, but clearly isn't aware of how good he's got. Not to say he's a snob or thinks he's better than others, but clearly craves acceptance or praise. Hence why he wants to be around Gabi, a fan of his work he's been avoiding. Not because he's lazy, he's afraid to take chances, and this movie challenges his character. Speaking of his character, I'll just say after he goes through the cloning process and witnesses his own execution, the choices he makes afterwards, I feel like people will dismiss as, no normal person would do this, or how can he not see how obvious this is a dumb choice he's making? And it's obvious to me he's not, the same normal person after going through the cloning process, so I am willing to give it leeway because it's clear that's what that's about, I feel like when I was introduced to the cloning element to the story, I saw the trailer, so I wasn't, surprised, but no. I was just worried the movie would become predictable and what they would do with the idea of cloning. I feel like most sci-fi stories involving clones go in the direction of who is the original or something like that. But the movie is smarter than that. It goes into a different direction where it's a little predictable still, but different. It's definitely more shocking and surprising in more ways than what could have become, self-parody with this idea. After a certain scene in the movie, I was wondering if it was going to go in that direction like I thought it was, I thought that's what was going to happen, but after that, it goes right down to what this movie is actually about, and in that case, I have to go into spoilers, so warning, here are spoilers, go to this time to avoid the spoilers, okay? You've been warned, don't get mad at me. So James joins a group of rich people who refer to themselves as zombies, since they were technically killed if their duplicates are exact copies of them. And even though this is the spoiler section, what this amounts to without spoiling the plot is that they break James down as the idea of cloning, where unlike them, he can't find himself to be just like them, where they see themselves as higher beings in a way, where this process makes them practically immortal. And when it's revealed they were manipulating him from the start, which, yeah, that is what leads to my problems of the predictability, where I'm like, from the first frame, I'm like, yeah, they're going to manipulate him into this process. But yeah, so they start to show him how privileged or lucky he truly is when he may not have deserved it. It makes him realize how meaningless as a person he is, whether he gives into it to be just like them, or it's because he's too afraid to be someone he's not. It's not like he himself matters. Even if he is or is not the original James, he's still the same person. So whether he's a copy or not, he's like this. And while I prefer stories like Everything Everywhere All at Once, at least most recently off the top of my head they compare it to, where they show how even though these existential issues are not mattering or being nothing special, there's people around you that love you for you. And I'm not offended by a movie that shows someone who clearly isn't happy with himself for the choices he's made. I'm fine with the movie that shows a character who lets nihilism take him over or something. If he might have been happy at the moment, life will go on. But he's not the same, and you can't change that, because that's the character, and that's the point of the movie, at least to me. So, with that said, and the spoilers, let's go back to this part. Okay, now that we're out of the spoiler section, what else can I say about the movie? Or, I guess I have to talk about my problems with the movie. Now, in terms of problems I had with the movie, I will say, this movie leaves some things vague, like, obviously, I don't mind a movie leaving things vague, but okay, in terms of things they left vague, you can probably guess what I'm referring to with the setup given, but I don't mind that since it's handled well and goes with its themes. But with the villains of the story, I said in the spoiler section, I'm not going to say who they are, but I just don't get why they do this to him. Because I get the goal and what the point is, but it's never really clear why they care all to mess with him. I don't know, it's just a bit... It's like I'm thinking like as them as characters on their own, it's like, why do they care? But it's also predictable, as I said, as I did defend James' choices in the story, but it's easy to see where it'll go from there. It's just how it does it that makes it interesting, which I don't mind. As I'll also say, the movie is well-paced. It's never boring. Runtime is deserved. I think the movie is great, and while I could easily see why people wouldn't like this, while the horror element comes from it being a tense, dreadful story, not specifically just monsters or something. It's just, there are sequences that, let's just say, when stuff like that happen, yeah, people who left the theater, I don't blame them if they didn't know going in, that, okay, let's just say that, yeah, I'll just go down right and say it. So, be warned what I'm about to say. Orgies. You're gonna see boobs and people's junk. So, be warned. So I can kind of see why people wouldn't like to go into a movie with this if they didn't know that ahead of time. And I will say... I'm actually surprised some of the cast agreed to do this, or I don't know. I mean, Mia Goth agreed to do what she does in the movie, but she and Skarsgard were great in Pearl and the Northman last year, so I'm glad to see them in a movie together. Despite that, since they are also great here. Speaking of surprises, the movie also has dark humor at random points and will make you uncomfortable one way or another. The kind of humor where it's like you don't know, but you just have to laugh because you don't know what else to feel, and it's great. So the best way to put it, it's not for everyone. Truth be told, I wonder if that's where this comes from. Without getting into spoilers, there is a line Gabi has in the movie she says to James, and even though from an interview I saw where I don't think he feels this way, it's easy to tell with the character James is supposed to be, yeah, what this is relating to, and feels like Brandon Cronenberg saying he's not this kind of person. And I don't think that about him. Truth be told, it does feel like he took elements of something from his real life, and I'm like... Okay, if you saw the dialogue, the first moment you're like... But, regardless of all that, he made a great movie that I still haven't said as much as I should, but to wrap things up, not everyone will be up for the trip, but if you want to, go see Infinity Pool. It might be one of the best horror trips of the year, and it's only January. Although, I will say one more critique. It's called Infinity Pool, and I can kind of get why it's called Infinity Pool, but there's no actual Infinity Pool in the movie. Yeah, okay, I had a problem with that. That legit got me annoyed. Like, if you have a movie called Infinity Pool, have an Infinity Pool. Don't just have a guy say he makes Infinity Pools and not even show him making an Infinity Pool. Have an Infinity Pool in your movie. I give Infinity Pool an 8 out of 10.